Owning a boat comes with a number of perks, like being able to say ahoy or land ho and not feel weird about it. So here's another perk. Geico's boat insurance offers access to the largest towing fleet on the water. And with specialist support from agents that are as passionate about boating as you are, there's so much value that you'll want to say, shiver me timbers, and not feel weird about that either. Get more with Geico.
Beautiful Anonymous changes each week. It defies genres and expectations. For example, our most recent episode, I talked to a woman who survived a murder attempt by her own son. But just the week before that, we just talked the whole time about Star Trek. We've had other recent episodes about sexting in languages that are not your first language, or what it's like to get weight loss surgery. It's unpredictable, it's real, it's honest, it's raw. Get Beautiful Anonymous wherever you listen to podcasts.
I vehemently disagree with what he did after the 2020 election. I could still have a conversation with the brother. I could still have a conversation with his supporters, because you don't know what you do agree on until you talk.
Hey everybody, welcome to Dr. Phil's podcast. This is really an interesting day for a lot of reasons that I'll let you guys discern for yourselves, but we'll talk about too. I have an interesting person here today, probably not who you would predict to be my guest, but I'm very proud that he's my guest. I'm talking about a gentleman that's a graduate of Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania. He's also a graduate of Columbia Law School. I'm talking about Cenk Uygur. Now, listen, this is someone that sought out to deliver honest news and fight for positive change in America. And I think he has been very successful at doing it, I have to say. He's a best-selling author of Justice is Coming. This book has been out for a while, but it seems to get more and more on target as every month and year goes by. He's host and founder and CEO of the Young Turks. You're not so young anymore, but I mean, you can't change it to the semi-young Turks or the old Turks. It's the largest online news show in the world, which is dedicated to delivering honest news and fighting for positive change in America. Now, what you define as positive change, we're going to talk about today. Cenk has a long list of accolades, too long for me to read, but I'll give you a few. It includes the 25 most influential people in political news, Variety's Fame Changers, Webby and Shorty Awards. I mean, I could just go on and on. He was previously the host of MSNBC Live and has appeared as a commentator on CNN, Fox, and about everywhere you can commentate. Recently, he facilitated a powerful dialogue between family members. I mean, he was getting in my lane, to tell you the truth. He was put on his Dr. Phil hat. Family members divided by their support for different political candidates. And you've heard me talk about this, where families were fractured over this. They let politics actually break down family relationships, and really helping them realize they shared more common ground than they initially thought, and really healed some family relationships. Today, we're exploring how Americans can foster hope and understanding amidst the current politically turbulent waters that we're in, focusing on actionable strategies to encourage constructive dialogue rather than falling into this ridiculous cancel culture mentality. Thank you for being here. Thanks for joining me.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
I really have been looking forward to this. We set this up a long time ago. You posted that you were coming here and talking to me, and everybody wrote and said, great idea, right?
Yeah, well, half of them did.
Yeah.
The other half said, what are you doing going and talking to him for?
Why do you think half of the people said, what are you talking to him for? I mean, we know the answer to that, but maybe the viewers don't.
Yeah, so because we're divided. And so it's easy to treat the other side as the boogeyman. So, and we hear a lot of stories in the news about the outer fringes, right? So you got a guy who's saying crazy white nationalist things, and then our side thinks that's all the right. That's all 77 million people that voted for Donald Trump. And I'm trying to get them to see, guys, that's crazy. No, so does a radical portion exist on the right and the left? Yes, right? Are they the majority? Not even close. And for the right wing probably thinks that, the left wing is our most extreme person, right? And they have a certain stereotype in their head about what that person looks like and how they act, et cetera, when in reality, that's just the minority. And so that's why when they hear me talking to someone they perceive to be on the right wing, okay, and you were on the ICE raid, and so they got a certain thought on you, let alone the fact that you're Dr. Phil and everybody's known you for all this time. So they think, don't, it'll help them.
Were you surprised that I came on your show?
I was a little bit surprised. Yes? Yeah. I was definitely surprised.
Yeah.
I was surprised on a couple of fronts. Number one, because you wouldn't, it's a little apples and oranges on top of left versus right, Mm-hmm. But the more we talk, the more we realize how similar we are.
Yeah, it was apples and oranges in that you're political and news driven, and I'm more cultural, psychological, that sort of thing. But that's the reason I did it. I am cultural. I think a lot of politics, people say, are you now talking politics? And I say, no, I'm talking cultural. And they say, well, it sounds like politics. That's because politicians talk about culture a lot. They're getting in my lane. I'm not getting in theirs. I came on and a lot of people said, oh, well, he's yelling, screaming, getting all up on his hind legs and barking. And, I listened to you a long time before I came on the show. And I thought, this guy's just passionate about things that matter. He didn't seem irrational to me at all. It just seems like there's things he cares about and things he doesn't. And the things he cares about, he really cares about them. But it seemed to me before I came on your show, and I'd said this to you earlier today, I came on because it seemed to me that you and Anna really do your homework. And when you get passionate about something, you're talking about facts. You're talking about empirical data that supports the positions you're on. And I respect people that do their homework.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And right back at you. And so, look, when you came on, we had a perfectly great conversation, rational conversation. So why do I get worked up? Well, there's things that you should get worked up about. And so here, I'll give you an example of getting worked up, but then getting to peace, which is, so on the issue of Israel, I get very, passionate. And so sometimes somebody will call me a name and they'll say, okay, now we're on. And now we go to warrior jank and now we're fighting, right? But I did this debate at UCLA about Israel. And at the end, I said, if you take away from this that you should hate Israel, you got the exact wrong message. Okay, so our efforts at peace are so that we don't hate each other. So if you are driving more hatred on both sides, you're never going to get to peace. The goal is peace. The goal is not one side winning, right? Then when you look at American politics and culture, wait a minute, why don't we do the same thing? Now, I've been a warrior for a long time, and I think our side needed warriors. I thought we were too soft and quiet, got steamrolled by the right wing 20 years ago, 10 years ago, et cetera. But now, for God's sake, we need some peacemakers.
I couldn't agree more. Look, when you're talking about things like a huge ally of America, which is Israel, their most important ally in the world for sure, they're an important ally for America for sure. They get attacked on October 7th, and it's not long after that sentiment started seeming to turn against Israel. For a time, everybody was like, oh my God, horrible atrocities here. But then it started to turn against Israel because a lot of people in the Gaza Strip were losing their lives, and people were going, oh, that's horrible. And of course it is. War is terrible. Now, this has gone on for a long, long time, and there's a ceasefire and apparently a hostage deal. What do you think about that?
Yeah, look, it's not about the people, it's about the governments. And so Benjamin Netanyahu is not to be trusted. There's no way that he means that deal. And to be fair to him, he said it right afterwards. He's like, this is not going to hold. But he said it in Hebrew. That one he didn't say in English. And he said, we reserve the right to bomb them anytime we like. Well, that's not a peace deal. That's not a real ceasefire. And so, look, if we're being honest, and that's what I do, money in politics controls everything. Yeah.
Getting quality sleep can be a struggle. Beyond feeling tired, poor sleep affects focus at work, patience with loved ones, and leaves you constantly drained. Finding a solution is key. That's where Beam's Dream Powder comes in. This healthy hot cocoa has completely transformed sleep for many. With flavors like cinnamon cocoa, sea salt caramel, and brownie batter, each serving is only 15 calories and 0 grams of sugar. Guilt-free and effective. Dream's all-natural ingredients help you fall asleep faster, stay asleep longer, and wake up feeling refreshed. It's easy to add to a nighttime routine. Just mix it with hot water or milk before bed. If you want to try Beam's best-selling Dream Powder, get up to 40% off for a limited time when you go to shopbeam.com/Dr. Phil and use code Dr. Phil at checkout. That's shopbeam.com/Dr. Phil and use code Dr. Phil for up to 40% off. Well, you said it's between governments. Is Hamas a government?
Well, they're in a strange middle ground, right? Because they did actually win an election, but then they canceled elections. So then once you cancel elections, are you a legitimate government or not? But look, whenever you have an occupation, what it does is it breeds radicalism. Because you don't have any real power, any moderate is seen like a collaborator. So if you're more radical, you're going to get more power. So that's why you got to get to peace. So Israel did a peace deal with Egypt. It worked. It's worked ever since. Peace works. And at the time, people said, no way, Egypt will never follow through. They'll keep bombing us. They'll keep attacking us. Well, they were wrong. The peacemakers, Jimmy Carter was right. Anwar Sadat was right. Menachem Begin was right. So in terms of Israel, they have kind of two things. One, stop killing those folks. Here, I'll give you an analogy, Dr. Phil. So it's like a nerd came up to the biggest football player on the team, and he did something bad to him. He kicked him in the shin. And they go, hey, what'd you do that for? Or he kicked him somewhere worse. Now, that guy, the big guy on the football team, has been on top of this little nerd and punched him in the face about 45 times. And the rest of us are going, please, you gotta stop punching him. This is brutal. You have to stop. And it doesn't help Israel. It doesn't help the Palestinians. It doesn't help America. And then the last thing is, I'm a populist. So sorry, but we've given $300 billion to Israel. Enough. It's too much. And by the way, they're a grown-up country now. They're strong. They got the strongest military in the Middle East. They have paid family leave. They have universal health care. We don't have either one of those things. They have one of the strongest economies there. You got this. You could do it on your own.
Well, in your analogy, who was the kicking in the shins?
So the nerd, the little guy comes in and kicks the big guy in the shin, okay?
Yeah.
And so he's got a right to hit him back.
So,
but at the same
your analogy,
time,
who was the shin kicker?
The Palestinians.
Yeah. And was that October 7th?
Yeah.
Wow. That pretty much trivializes what happened on October 7th, doesn't it?
No, because it's an analogy. Just punching the nerd in the face for 45 times also trivializes what happened at Gaza, which is utter slaughter and destruction.
Yeah.
So,
but they had a right to defend themselves.
Of course.
To retaliate. Do you think that when Hamas did what they did on October 7th, that they could predict what was going to happen?
So I can't read the minds of Hamas, and I'm opposed to Hamas.
I know you are.
Yeah, and I think
that I don't want to characterize you as in any way endorsing what Hamas did on October 7th, because I know you don't.
Yeah. So look, nobody ever talks about the whole context of the situation. So the reality is that 5.5 million Palestinians have been occupied by Israel for 57 long years, and so no one would tolerate being occupied at all, let alone for 57 years. And the analogy I often use is Texas. So if somebody came and occupied Texas, do you think Texas might fight back? Do you think the citizens might fight back? And especially if you took away any opportunity to do it in a legitimate way, do you think maybe an insurgency would rise that others would call terrorism, right? So now that doesn't justify the terrorism, but it just explains to you how we got here. So 57 years, so then Hamas does something terrible in return. Okay. And then Israel goes, oh, you want to see terrible? We'll show you terrible, and levels the whole place. So, but what Israel doesn't understand is that they are Goliath. For all of Jewish history, they have been David, and they have been abused, and they have been traumatized, and I don't know people that have suffered more, right? But they're misunderstanding the current situation. They're no longer David. They're Goliath, plus they've got even bigger Goliath behind them. And they're beating up on these folks when they got to let them go.
Okay, but you just said a really important word. You just said but.
Mm-hmm.
You just said for all of this time, they have been David. But That means forget everything I just said. I'm going to now tell you what I really mean.
No, it doesn't.
Now they're Goliath.
No, it just means the situation has changed.
It has changed. I'm saying you can't forget all of that time. And I don't want to get into a yeah, but. The situation is complex, and the Palestinians have been offered peace accords and all different kinds of opportunities to change this occupation circumstance time and time and time again. We can go back and forth about that. My point is that there is no moral equivalent to what happened on October 7th.
I actually totally disagree. I think what Israel has done since is far, far worse, and it's empirical. So they've killed 62,000 now. Hamas killed 1,200. My heart breaks for that 1,200. There was kids in there. There was terrible things that were done in there. Now Israel has done every one of those things, but times 60. So don't tell me that Israel is more moral. I would argue they are more immoral. And especially when you're Goliath, you have a responsibility to tread a little bit more carefully. And Israel has done the exact opposite. And remember, they're the ones who started it by occupying them in the first place. There's not a single Texan that would ever tolerate what Israel has done to the Palestinians.
Well, we could go over the number of times that Israel has been attacked. And when you say that they have done the same or worse, I don't know of an aggressor that has gone to the lengths that Israel has gone to, dropping leaflets, warning people, get out of this area, get out of this area, get out of this area, because we're coming after the aggressors. To me, they have gone to extreme lengths to try and protect civilian life. But if you have people that come across and assassinate women, children, and infants in their cribs, and then run back and hide in populous areas, schools, hospitals, and tunnels, and say, well, I'm now in a neighborhood, so you can't come after me, that's violating the rules of war. That's violating every possible measure of warfare that you can possibly do. You can't do that and expect, okay, so I get away with it. That's not going to happen.
Okay, so you're turning me back into the warrior, Cenk. Okay, but let me try to handle it a different way. Can I get you to see it from the other perspective? Okay, so I hear what you're saying about the Israeli perspective. Well, these guys hit me. What do you want me to do? And I have a literal answer to that. I was asked, on October 8th or whenever I went on the first show afterwards, I said, yeah, you should use special forces like we did to get bin Laden. Is it riskier? Of course it is. But as Goliath, you have a responsibility, but you're still going after them. So there are real ways you could do military, you could do economic, you could do diplomatic. Israel has infinite power over the Palestinians. They control their lives completely and utterly. They could kill them at any moment, and they do. And the things that you described, they don't do that anymore at all. They're using an AI program called Where's Daddy? They have no idea if it's the right guy, but they wait till he gets home so that they kill his family with him. It's disgusting and deeply immoral. I think they're a terrorist state, and I think they do terrorism far worse than anything I've seen from the Palestinians. Now, having said all that, okay, so I'm a bad guy. If you're from Israel's perspective, you go, I don't like that. He's saying mean things about us, and we got every right to occupy these people and keep them as our slaves for 57 long, brutal years, and I'll do it for 500 more years because I'm superior to them. That's how I view Israel. And so I'm not a friend. I'm not like in the sense of what they're doing today. My God, they do a peace deal. I love Israel. Let's go together. And I want it to be beautiful, safe haven for Jews. They deserve it, etc. But can I get you to see the Palestinian perspective? How long do you want me to be occupied? How long do you want me to live under the thumb of a different people? How long would you accept that? What would you do that was different? And they've tried everything. They've gone to the UN, just like Israel did, rebuffed. They've tried diplomacy, rebuffed. They try everything, rebuffed, because Israel has infinite power because it controls America.
I can look at it from Palestinians' point of view, and I hate the loss of life in Palestine. I absolutely hate the loss of life in Palestine. I think when Hamas made the attack they did on October 7th, they put a sequence of events into play that they knew was going to happen. They don't value life, they value death. And I think they put all of those people in harm's way. They knew what they were doing when they did it. They're responsible for what's happening in Gaza Strip when they did what they did. They knew what was going to happen when they did it. So it's happening. And now this peace accord, will it hold? Netanyahu is, I suppose, skeptical of it when you're dealing with people in power whose prime directive is you be dead. It's hard to negotiate with people who are oriented to wipe you off the face of the earth. And from
Nonsense.
the river to the sea, you can spin that any way you want, but that is what it is.
It's so hard not to get frustrated. I'm trying to make peace here, but Dr. Phil, look, last things on this. Number one, Netanyahu has said from the river to the sea. So don't tell me that you don't like from the river to the sea when your prime minister says it. Number two, he's actually doing river to the sea, and they're going to take Gaza, and they're going to try to take the West Bank. Number three, they've now killed 60 times the number of civilians. So how could killing 60 times the number of civilians be more morally correct than killing one time? It just doesn't make any sense. But America's only looking at it from the Israeli perspective. Oh my God, what would you do if you were attacked? Okay, but I'm asking you, what would you do if another race, country, religion, government was oppressing you for 57 years? They have to go to checkpoints. They get humiliated at every checkpoint. They have no rights at all. The settlers have killed 1,000 people in the West Bank. Nothing to do with the Gaza Strip, nothing to do with Hamas. Hamas is not in charge of the West Bank. They kill, oppress, humiliate, and then they go, I can't believe you're mad about it. Oh my God, I can't give you freedom because you don't like Israel. How were they supposed to like Israel? At what point would they have liked Israel? When they drove them from their homes in 1948? When they drove them off their land in the West Bank, the Gaza Strip? At what point, I mean, what kind of perverse logic is, I'm going to brutalize you for 60 years, but you have to love me. If you don't love me, then I'm not going to do peace with you. No, that's just saying I don't want to do peace with you. I don't want it. I want more land. And look at this. What a wonderful coincidence. Now, Trump is talking about giving them more land. Look, so the right-wing government of Israel is a plague upon this earth. And so I have tremendous sympathy for the people and the citizens of Israel. I have tremendous sympathy for Jewish people all across the world. And I think Netanyahu is putting them in more danger than I have ever seen in my life. He's not just terrible for Palestinians. He's not just terrible for Americans. He keeps taking our money over and over again. He's terrible for all Jews across the world. He's driving up anti-Semitism beyond description. He's doing all the things that people said that they would do. No, stop. You're a trope machine. Stop. And he won't stop because America enables him and keeps giving him blank check after blank check. I don't want to give another dollar to Israel until we have paid family leave. They have it, we don't. Why are we giving them money? Why don't they give us the $300 billion back?
Do you hope the peace accord holds?
Of course. I mean,
you hope the hostages are returned?
Of course.
And do you think there's a chance it will?
No, none. Israel wants that land. I guarantee you to, on this show, and you'll see I'm right. They're going to go in and try to take the land because they never actually cared about anything but taking that land. And they're going to make us pay for it.
All right, well, we'll watch and see if you're right.
Yep.
All right, you said it here.
Mm-hmm.
All right. $36 trillion. That is the U.S. debt, and it gets deeper and deeper by the day. Our debt has never been higher, nor have the stakes. The government is looking to slash the federal budget by $2 trillion, and no one knows what that will mean for your job, savings, and future. I've seen a lot in my time, and there's one thing I know for sure. You need to prepare before it's too late. I trust Preserve Gold to help protect my wealth, and I strongly urge you to do the same. They are the only precious metals firm I trust and recommend to my family, friends, and audience, and they have a special offer just for you. Text Dr. Phil to 50505 to get your free Precious Metals Guide from Preserve Gold. With gold prices recently breaking records and analysts predicting this trend to continue throughout 2025, you cannot afford to wait. As a bonus, you can get up to $15,000 with a qualified purchase from Preserve Gold. So don't wait. Text Dr. Phil to 50505 today. You ran for Congress in 2020. Why did you do that?
So I founded Justice Democrats, and I was one of the co-founders. And so we got the miraculous win with AOC and, you know, all the others that you've heard about in the squad, et cetera. And they were supposed to do economic populism and anti-corruption. So that's the Bernie Sanders agenda. I'm a progressive populist, so I believe in Bernie Sanders' agenda. But part and parcel of that is you got to go and challenge your colleagues. Because if you don't challenge your colleagues, you will not be able to get money out of politics. And if you don't get money out of politics, you're not going to win on any of these issues. You're not getting it. The cancer is corruption, right? So as I get frustrated with Israel getting all this money, why? Because of AIPAC. But you think AIPAC's the only lobby? No way. Healthcare, the drug companies spend 4 times as much. Oil companies, bank companies. It's an open auction. The Saudis, the United Arab Emirates, everybody's buying American politicians. It's a great return on investment. Unfortunately, that was really hard to do. So they wound up doing culture wars and identity politics. And I don't like it. So that's not, in my opinion, and everybody's got a different opinion, everybody's got a different view on it. But my view as one of the co-founders was economic populism, and you got to get out the corruption. So since they didn't do it, then I thought, I'm so desperate, I'll try. Because I think media is better. I think media is more important. But at that time, if I had gotten into Congress, I would have had a bigger mic, and I would have used it to call out both Republicans and Democrats and say, here's how much they get. Well, I remember one bill, we're talking about negotiating drug prices, right? Why can't we negotiate drug prices? I can negotiate, hey, I don't like that pair of jeans costs too much. That one costs the right amount. You know, I can buy it at whatever price I want. Right. With drugs, they say, no, you're not allowed to. You have to pay what this company says. That's outrageous. It's the most anti-capitalist, anti-free market thing I've ever heard. So they get into a debate about it. There's a Democratic woman in Florida. She's taking $840,000 from the drug companies. Put up a giant slide. Why is she voting against this bill that has like 90% popularity? Here's why. Because she took $840,000 in legalized bribes. And so they weren't willing to do it. So that's why I thought I'll try.
Well, that's clearly conflict of interest, right? It's corporate capture of the regulatory agencies and the people voting on the policies that govern these big pharmas. How has that happened? Why is that going on? You said it's legalized bribery. We've got agencies that are supposedly, directly or indirectly, regulating the pharmaceutical companies on whether a drug gets passed and put on the market or not. And if it gets passed, there are people in this chain of approval that get paid if it gets approved and not if it doesn't. And they get paid in perpetuity. They get paid for life. And when they die, it passes on to their children. When they die, it passes on to their children. That, to me, is the most blatant conflict of interest that you could imagine. If that happened in any other setting, it would clearly be payola. It would clearly be a bribe. It would be against the law, but it's legalized here. How is that happening?
So that's exactly what I wrote about in Justice is Coming. So in 1976 and 78, the Supreme Court passes two decisions, Buckley v. Vallejo and Bilotti, and they changed the entire tenor of the country and our government and our politics. And that's actually where we lost democracy, and we haven't had it since. And so what they say is now a corporation contributing to a politician is fine now. It's just freedom of speech. That ain't speech, it's money. So Congressman Jamie Raskin made a good point about this once. Even before he was in Congress, he was testifying. He's a constitutional law expert. He said, if that's true, if I go to a prostitute and I pay her, I'm just talking to her. Okay, so you can't punish me. I'm just talking to her because you just said money is speech. It's absurd. Money isn't speech, it's a bribe. And so all these folks are getting bribed left and right. And what drives me crazy is that mainstream media never calls it a bribe. And they all pretend that the politicians are honorable gentlemen and that they had a real debate. They haven't had a real debate in decades. They just having a competition of who's going to pay me more. John Boehner, Republican, used to hand out checks from the tobacco industry on the floor of the House right before they had a vote on tobacco. Okay. And so this is what the right—
It's insane.
It's insane. This is what the right calls the uni-party, establishment Republicans and establishment Democrats. They're 100% right. It is a uni-party, and they're on the same team. And you know what it is? It's good cop, bad cop. By the way, MSNBC and Fox News, good cop, bad cop. Okay? They all pretend to be on different teams, and they get us into endless culture wars, endless identity politics. And what happens at the end? At the end, while we're distracted fighting over transgender this and DEI that and whatever else we're fighting over, they're passing giant tax cuts for the rich, for corporations, subsidies. The oil companies get $30 billion in subsidies. Why? They're the richest companies in the world. Why are they're taking money out of taxpayers' pockets, working to the bone to pay the giant oil companies. Listen, you want to drill, baby, drill. Okay, I get it. We could have a debate about that, okay? But this isn't about that. This is why do they need our subsidies? They don't need extra money. And it's all because the Supreme Court basically legalized bribery back in 1978, well before Citizens United. And what I write in chapter 4 is about how the Democratic Party got captured by corporations and started serving them just as much as the Republicans did. And that's how we got to the uni-party.
The book he's referring to, I mentioned it earlier. He didn't even ask me to bring this up, by the way, and he certainly didn't ask me to hold it up and talk about it. It's Justice is Coming. I've read it. You should read it. There are some really good points in here. Now, you may disagree with them, but I'll tell you what, they're researched and there's data to back his position. Now, you may look at it and say, well, I disagree with his conclusion, but you won't disagree with his data, because the homework is done, and when he cites a case, it's the right case, and when he says what it says, that's what it says. Now, you might disagree with how you interpret it or what impact it had, but you can damn well bet it's correct and it's accurate, and that's why I say that's why I went on the show when I did, and that's why I'm happy to have him here and talk about these things. You may disagree with certain things, but you won't disagree with the facts. And I happen to 100% agree with you about this corporate capture that has just, it's a scam. I mean, it's a whole scam. We pretend that it's just business as usual. It has become business as usual, but it's not really business. It's people lining their own pockets at our expense. Now, you wrote a message to Elon Musk on X on November 17th of 2024 on how to cut the budget. What was your plan?
So they say they want to cut the budget, and I said, great, there's tons of things to cut. We just talked about those oil subsidies. I'd cut those in a second, save everybody $30 billion right out of the gate, right? So I'm looking for the things we agree on. Because when we get to things we disagree on, all right, then we're in a food fight, right? But I thought that the right wing might want to cut the Pentagon. Now that's, if you're on the left, you don't believe that. You think, no way the right wing wants to cut the Pentagon. But I thought, now I've gone on a lot of shows. I went and did this, almost appointed myself the ambassador to MAGA, right, from the left wing's ambassador to MAGA. A lot of people don't agree that I should have appointed myself or that that's true. But what I discovered is, oh my God, we do agree on a lot of things. We're dead set against corruption. We're anti-war. And in a lot of ways, we value and treasure America in similar ways. And so one of the things is I got this thing of, I think they might realize that the Pentagon is loaded with pork and that the military industrial complex is actually robbing us blind. So I suggest that to Elon. I said, look, if you're going to do Doge, you're going to try to, you said you want to cut $2 trillion. I'll take $200 billion off the Pentagon. You're 10% of the way there. I'll take $400 billion. They can't find $400 billion every year. They can't pass an audit. You're 20% of the way home.
And this is something that I think people jump to conclusions sometimes when they hear something like, cut the Pentagon, cut defense. you're saying you would actually be able to cut 200 billion, 400 billion, and not weaken our defense 1%.
Not
because
1 bit.
this is just all pork. This is just all waste. Has nothing to do with how many tanks, how many jet fighters, how many missiles, how many guns, how much actual defense we have. You're just talking about cutting stuff that has nothing to do with our ability to defend the United States of America.
100%. So I remember during the Iraq War, everybody put the yellow ribbon, support the troops. So I was like, wait, is all this money that we're going to send for the Iraq War really going to the troops? So I did a little bit of research. And at the time, incoming service members were getting paid $19,000 a year. I said, where's the support for the troops? Oh my God, almost none of this is going to the troops. It's going to Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, et cetera. And then recently there was a story out about Boeing was charging us like $800 or $8,000 for a soap dispenser. I mean, you remember the story of the golden toilet bowl and all this stuff, right? So because they use the gimmick of support the troops, national security, to get you to stop asking questions. They can't pass an audit. They haven't passed an audit for almost a decade. You ask them, hey guys, all right, we gave you 800 billion some odd dollars. Where's the money? They're like, oh, $400 billion of it, we don't know where it is. Okay, good, then you don't need it. If you can't tell me where it is, then you obviously don't need it.
If you can't find it, then it wasn't critical.
Yeah. Like, because the other money, they could say, oh, it went to the aircraft carrier, it went to the submarine, it went to the troops. Okay, great, no problem. Where's the other 400? Oh, no, don't tell me you can't find it. No way.
See, this is why you and I need to talk. Because if I sit over here and say, all right, somebody comes along and said, yeah, I was listening to this thing. He's saying, cut all this money from the Pentagon. And they go, oh, yeah, okay. Then here's this lefty, and he's wanting to cut defense. That's not what you're saying.
No.
You're not saying reduce one missile. You're not saying reduce our strength and therefore make us vulnerable and less able to maintain peace through strength. You're saying just quit wasting money. Let's go in there and at least cut the money. They can't even tell you where it went.
Yeah.
And if it went to lobbyists, what they're paying off people, whatever, let's get rid of that. Let's just make sure the money they're spending is going to actual defense, is going to weaponry, is going to missile detection, is going to pay soldiers, is going to body armament, is going to something we actually need.
Absolutely. We wasted bare minimum, $2 trillion in Iraq. How many families could we feed? How much better could our education system be? Could we have paid family leave so moms get 12 weeks off after they have a baby? We could do all of these things if we didn't waste $2 trillion in Iraq. And what did we get out of it? I don't know what we got out of it. I don't know that we got a single thing out of it. And so, but it isn't about cutting defense to make us weaker. It's to get it lean, mean fighting machine so that we make it ourselves stronger. It's exactly what Dwight Eisenhower said as he was leaving office. He said, beware of the military-industrial complex, and for every dollar we spend in that direction, it's a dollar that we're not spending on bread and butter and our children and our education. And he was 100%, he was a Republican president, won World War II, and he was 100% right. And as long, and Dr. Phil, you said it before, the problem that's larger than defense or oil or any of these things is, are we allowed to ask questions? Don't tell me national security, you're not allowed to ask questions. No. It's our national security. We are allowed to ask questions, okay? And I don't care if you're on the left or right, we're gonna question you, okay? So let's open this thing up. Mainstream media has had a monopoly on, what we're allowed to think, what we're allowed to say, and a lot of that, in chapter 5 of the book is called The Matrix, and that's mainstream media. And it gives you a sense of what's real, but it isn't. It's an illusion. And there's an illusion about who's a moderate. There's an illusion about what our government is doing. They keep talking about how the politicians are debating. They've never debated a thing in the last 40 years. So at the end of the day, they always huff and puff, and they always rally on things that help the powerful. The number one thing that Joe Biden said, and one of the few things he delivered on, was in 2020 when he told his donors, nothing will fundamentally change. Because if you're on top, you don't want anything to change. You want to maintain the status quo. And if you want to maintain the status quo, you know what you tell people? Don't ask any questions. Just accept things as they are. And if you ask any questions, you're betraying national security, you're betraying this, you're betraying that. It's all a house of lies.
You know, it's been said, I'd rather have questions I can't answer than answers I can't question. And we ought to be able to question any answer that we get from our government. We should be able to raise our hand and say, hey, wait a minute. That doesn't ring right with me. I want to question what you're telling me. That's just not happening. That's what you say. There's no debate going on. There's nobody actually discussing and saying, I want to hold you accountable for what you just said. Give me some data on that. Show me some proof about that. Show me where this money's going. Show me what the outcome is going to be. That's why I think having a big microphone is important, because those that have them aren't really using them.
So I'll give you another example now, this time from the Democrats. In California, the good people of California have appropriated at least $24 billion to help with homelessness. Now, has it worked? Now, we did that out of the goodness of our heart, you know, and we want to help the homeless. We want to help everybody. So you ask Gavin Newsom, where'd the money go? And he says, well, no, we're not going to answer that. It's hard to track. Oh, I'm sorry. Was your job supposed to be easy? You're the governor. What do you mean you don't know where the money is? I don't care if a Democrat says it or a Republican says it. Where did the money go, and why did homelessness go up 53% instead of going down? Don't tell me you need to be more compassionate and give me more money for the homeless. We are compassionate. We already voted to give them $24 billion, not to give them, but to give $24 billion to fix the situation. You made it worse, and now you tell me I can't question where the money went. No, I'm questioning. And by the way, the Democrats, the left, used to be the party and the culture that questioned more. In the 1960s and 70s, questioned the government, questioned the Vietnam War, questioned the way things were done, the status quo. Now, unfortunately, some on the left have gotten to a point where the right wing is out questioning us, right? They're asking, hey, is this right? Is that right? And sometimes, by the way, the right will go to a place where I go, ooh, no. Come back. No, that's not, you're going down the wrong alley, right? But at least they're going down an alley, right? They're going somewhere, they're trying something.
But doesn't it seem like people on the left are even to the point of telling you what words you can use, not even saying what you can question or not, but what words you can use to express yourself? That's what worries me sometimes. And words are powerful, so that bothers me. I mean, we spend more time, is this someone experiencing homelessness, or is this a homeless person? I worry that we sometimes, and I'm the first one to say words are powerful, but I worry sometimes that when we're saying, we're not going to call this a felon, we're going to say this is someone that has experienced the justice system. Seriously, they don't want to have an admissions office. They want to say this is the office of registry or something, because they want people to feel rejected. I mean, come on. We've gone too far in this. People need to feel rejection sometimes. That's how they toughen up and work harder so the next time they're not rejected. I worry sometimes that we're focusing on the wrong things. Instead of worrying about how we describe the homelessness, let's fix it. I don't care so much what we call it as I do getting this person off the street, out of the elements, and a path to becoming a contributing member of society so they can be proud of who they are and find a way back to their life again. I mean, that, to me, deserves more focus than how it's being labeled. And not that that is not worthy of some consideration, but sometimes it seems to be the focus of the consideration.
Yeah, I totally agree. And so, again, I'll be bipartisan here. So I remember when Dick Cheney used to do this, and he said, oh, no, we're not calling it torture anymore. It's now enhanced interrogation.
Yeah, well, come on.
Come on, right? So,
Yeah.
so now the left is doing it. So they started saying, no, you don't say homeless anymore. You say unhoused. Why? Well, it's the same exact thing.
Does it make you less cold?
Yeah, it doesn't give him a blanket if you call him unhoused instead of homeless, right? Why? What are we doing here? What are we doing? So, like, if you find an offensive word, here, I'll give you an example, like redskin. Okay, no, that's offensive because you're labeling their skin color, and it's a thing that they definitely do not like, do not want. Okay, but then we go to Native American. Okay, good, great, wonderful. Okay, now, no, First people or indigenous people. Guys, Native American's fine. Like, it's not offensive, 1%. Why are we constantly changing every frickin' word? And then if someone hasn't caught up to your fourth change, this is the most important part. Then you shame them and you scold them.
Yeah.
And you say that they're immoral because they hadn't caught up on your thesaurus and what we're calling homeless folks and Native Americans.
Yeah, and that glossary changes sometimes so fast that you better be dialed in, particularly if you're on the air like we are. You better check that glossary before you start the show because it could have changed since last night.
That's right. And I've been canceled by every part of the political spectrum, and that's one of the things they cancel you over. But let me give you a personal example. So my name is Cenk Uygur, but the C is pronounced like a J, which is unusual. It's a Turkish name, and you don't see that in English. You don't see that in America. So some folks on the left would say, if somebody says Cenk instead of Cenk, that's harming you, or that's a microaggression. No, it's called they don't know that a C is pronounced as a J in Turkish, and why the heck would they know that? Like, for God's sake, oh, you said the Kamala Harris is the name the wrong way. Who cares?
Well, you are a delicate flower.
Yeah, I might break if you say, if you pronounce my name wrong. I mean, how are they supposed to know it's pronounced Uyghur? Besides which, it isn't. We made that up just so people could say it. It's actually Uyghur. I'm not going to try to force Americans to say Uyghur. Come on. Be reasonable, for God's sake.
Yeah, we focus on the wrong things sometimes. I love the fact that we come from seemingly different points of view, but can sit here and have a conversation like this. People don't know, but we've probably spent, 4 hours together today? We had lunch, we talked about things, got to know each other better. When I was on your show, we spent more time out in the parking lot talking than we spent on the show. I've learned a lot about you. I've been transparent with you, I think. There's so much more than somebody's opinion or belief about something. That doesn't trivialize those beliefs. They're important to you. Mine are important to me. But you don't have to like everything about somebody to like that person. You don't have to agree with somebody on everything to have a relationship with that person. That's what we've gotten away from in America. And then somebody will say, well, they want to kill babies. And I'm sorry, I don't want to have a cup of coffee with a baby killer. I get that that's an important issue, but there's more to that person than that point of view, and you'll never change their perspective if you don't talk to them.
So another personal example, I agree 100%. So we had that, that kind of debate at the beginning of this show about Israel, right? And so you see, I get emotional about it, I get passionate about it, I care deeply about it. That's real human beings' lives at stake, right? But I've got to be able to talk to you, Dr. Phil, because like you said, how in the world can we get to can you understand my position if you never heard my position? How in the world can you empathize with Palestinians if I haven't asked you to empathize with Palestinians, right? So what my side does far too often these days is Islamophobe. Okay, first of all, that's a word you made up. Okay, and it's fine, right? And we can call it, say different words, you can say bigger, whatever, right? But I don't know that they're really like homophobe. Are they really afraid of gay people? Are they afraid of Muslims? It's just kind of a weird word to begin with, right? But okay, fine. Yeah, I could do that. That's easy. Oh, well, you don't value Palestinian lives, and it's something I care about deeply and a super important issue. Islamophobe. Okay, then I feel better because I'm morally righteous and I'm morally superior to you, et cetera. Or maybe we talk it through, and maybe I didn't convince the great majority of the people listening to this podcast, but maybe 10 or 20% thought, yeah, come to think of it, if I was a Palestinian, that would be kind of brutal, right? And I don't know what they're supposed to do about it if they're occupied for all that time, right? So just like we said, the important issue isn't a particular subsidy or is the Pentagon spending this right or that right. It's the ability to ask questions. And the most important issue isn't either Israel or climate change or whatever it might be. The most important thing is to actually have the conversation so that we begin to understand one another. And at the end of it, maybe somebody goes, hey, I heard Muslims were scary and this and that, and I heard about the terrorism. That's what TV's been telling me for 30, 40, 50 years straight. What are they supposed to think, right? But I met Cenk, and it turns out he, grew up Muslim. His family's Muslim. I'm an atheist now, so I can't win either way. But okay, but he doesn't seem like such a bad guy. He likes the Steelers. He likes Subs. I like Subs. I like the Cowboys. Maybe I should think about it differently. For God's sake, let's heal a little bit. Let's talk to each other.
Yeah, and I'm not the repository of all knowledge. I don't pretend that I'm right about everything. And one of the things that I'm proudest of is that every interview I do, my goal is to learn something. It doesn't matter who I'm talking to. I did an interview last week with someone that I really didn't want to do the interview. I didn't think it was going to add to what I had a pretty broad base of knowledge about something. I didn't think it was the best use of time. And the moral to the story. It was a highly productive interview. I got a lot of information I wasn't expecting to get. It was a different point of view, and I learned an awful lot about it. And I think it's one of the things that's kept me going all these years is to go in with a genuine curiosity and a willingness to try to learn by standing in another person's shoes and looking through it. And we need to do that more in this country instead of just, jumping to conclusions and wiping someone just completely off our social chart, moral chart, business chart, whatever. And sometimes it's identity politics. Sometimes it's just they're aligned with one group and you paint them with that whole group's brush. They may agree with one thing about that group and not 10 others. That's how they get swept up into being in that group. They might have agreed with one thing and then they got pulled into everything for that group. They may not at all feel that way. We need to talk in order to figure that out. I don't think we're as divided as the media paints everybody out to be. I just think we need to remind people of that and have them start inquiring and listening and saying, I've taught a lot of negotiation, and you've actually referred to this a few times. The first thing I do when I'm talking to people about negotiating is, first thing I want to do is let's talk about everything we agree about. We can get to all the stuff we disagree about in a minute, or everything I want that you have and everything you want that I have. But first, let's talk about what we agree about. Man, once you do that, you find out that list is pretty long. And the things you disagree about can be a pretty short list. And you also find out that you value different things. So the currency value that I put on what I want might be a 10 to me and a 2 to you. So it's high value to me and an easy give for you. What I'm willing to give could be a 2 for me and it's a 10 to you. So, hey, we might find out it's an easy trade. And that can be something as simple as the kid that wants an extra hour on their curfew. And they find out the hour doesn't matter. My parents want to know I'm safe during that time. And they happen to know that most auto accident fatalities happen between 12 and 2 a.m. because that's when the bars let out and drunk drivers are on the road. They don't care if I'm out, they just don't want me on the road. So if I can listen to them and figure that out, now I can negotiate being out as long as I'm not on the road. So if people listen, they go, hey, they want different things than I do. We can make a trade here. It's even as simple as parents and kids negotiating. It's the same principle that holds between governments and in business. Fundamentals if people will just listen.
Look, that's indisputable common sense. The only way you dispute that is if you don't really want to get along, that you like the fight and you want, and there's a certain emotional, psychological benefit you think you're getting out of that fight. And again, always I have examples on both sides, but here in this case on the left, they say this has been very recent and to me, right? Don't go talk to Patrick Bet-David or Tim Pool or Dr. Phil or whoever, right? Because, and I said, well, wait a minute though. Do you know that they agree with us on anti-corruption? They really hate the corruption. They don't like the money in politics. It's no way that's true. They supported Donald Trump, and Donald Trump took all this money from Elon Musk and Miriam Adelson and Tim Melton, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I know, but so did Joe Biden. Joe Biden took all this money from ExxonMobil and Lockheed Martin, et cetera. They're like, hey, are you saying it's a moral equivalent? Yeah, I am saying that. So, I mean, both sides used to do this. Now, again, the right wing's gotten better on this, to be honest. So I would tell an NPR audience, for example, Mitch McConnell takes $1 billion from corporate donors over his career. Corruption, right? And they're like, oh, yeah, that guy's the worst. Definitely corruption. Now, Nancy Pelosi, did you know Nancy Pelosi has also taken $1 billion from almost the same donors throughout her career? Well, that's fine. She's one of the good guys. Our donors are good guys. Their donors are bad guys. No. Anyway, so when I say, look, they actually agree with us on corruption, they're like, no, you don't know that. There's no way I believe you. I think that they want to cut the Pentagon. There's no way I believe you. But how would you know? You haven't even talked to them. Our side hasn't talked to the right wing in 10 years, 20 years, just because it's easier to go fascist, racist, Nazi. Oh God, I feel so good. I did that release. And then they'll say, hey, but you can point to different things that people have done wrong. I know, and I do, right? So if I have a complaint about Donald Trump, I just say it. I say it about policy, like January 6th. So if it breaks your heart, sorry, but you're also in a bubble. And so, no, I vehemently disagree with what he did after the 2020 election. I could still have a conversation with the brother. I could still have a conversation with his supporters, because you don't know what you do agree on until you talk. And it turns out, as you said, in my experience, turns out we agree on a lot. We just didn't get there. We just never had the conversation. Here, last thing on that, Dr. Phil. Some folks, not because it's a conspiracy theory or they're doing it actively, but it's part of the groupthink. So in establishment media and establishment politics, they don't really want us to talk. And so, because if we talked, we'd both realize, oh, it's the money in politics. Now, why doesn't mainstream media want us to talk about that? Do you know who one of their top advertisers is not the top advertiser? Politicians. So they take the 10, 20, 30 billion dollars that go into these elections these days, and almost all of it goes into ads on cable news, New York Times, Washington Post, etc. So if you find out that money in politics that's going straight into that media's pocket is corruption, well, that's a serious problem for their business model. So the very last thing they want you to do is talk to one another. And what's a great way to drive a wedge between you guys so you hate each other and never talk? Well, they're literally called wedge issues.
Yeah.
Cultural issues, identity politics, etc.
That's why I say I think we're not as a country as divided as the media would paint it to be. But they certainly seem to fan those flames. This is a broad question, but we can narrow it down. Is it possible that we suffer because we have non-problem solvers assigned to solving problems?
Yeah.
We have people that are tasked with solving economic problems, health problems, whatever, whose real objective is not to solve the problem at all, but to proliferate the problem because they think if I solve this problem, I'm out of a job. If I solve this problem, then government shrinks. If I solve this problem, then my importance, my budget, my empire building gets threatened. And so we have people in charge of solving problems who really are not motivated to solve the problem.
Yeah. So I think there's 3 layers of that. First of all, 100% agree. So number one, I started a group called Wolfpack to get money out of politics back in 2011, wolf-pack.com. So now what I told those guys is, this has to be temporary. Because if we make it our profession to get money out of politics, then our livelihood depends on us never solving that problem, right? And there I just described the problem with so many nonprofits and, cause-related issues, both left and right. If you solve the problem, then you don't need the group. And so and again, none of this is a conspiracy. They never write it in a memo. It's just a groupthink of like, oh yeah, well, we should do this naturally, right? And that thing never solves. I was talking to a leader of another left-wing group now about a decade ago, and he says, you guys, Wolfpack guys, you're radical populists and stuff, and you want to upturn the whole system. You don't know anything. I've been working on getting money out of politics for the last 40 years. And I said, how's that going for you? And the answer is, it was going pretty well because he has a nice house in McLean, right? But it wasn't going well for the rest of us. So that's problem number one. Okay, but that's not the only problem. So when we go to elect people, and this was a hard one to solve, what is the skill set you need to get elected? You need to be charismatic, dynamic, really be able to carry a message in whichever way that you do in a way that resonates with people. Now, what's the skill set you need to govern? Wait a minute. That's a totally different skill set. You need to be able to manage. You need to be efficient. You need to be inclusive rather than fighting for your own side. Sometimes it's just apples and oranges, and sometimes the skill sets are diametrically opposed. If you're great at beating up the other side and winning an election, you might not be very good at governing. So we're selecting for the wrong thing when we do this. And now you add the third and final layer. Now, in the old days, at least, okay, yeah, they got to be dynamic and they got to do all those things and they got to be a good fighter. But now the number one skill set you need to get elected is how to kiss donor ass. Okay, and so I mean this. All these politicians, sorry if it hurts people's feelings, but they are servants. That's all they are. They're servants for the donor class. They take orders. I don't know if people know this. They sit in a booth right outside of Congress for 4 to 6 hours a day. More than half their job is dialing for dollars. But they're not just dialing for dollars, they're dialing for orders. They're taking orders and then going and doing that in Congress. And so now, oh my God, we're electing based on who can raise the most money from donors. And what does mainstream media do? They don't say, hey, this guy raised $12 million for a congressional run. That's crazy. Where did he get that money? Oh, look, it comes from this industry, that's bad. No, instead they say, the leader in the race is Bob McHenry, who raised $12 million, and he's in the lead, and he's the best. Now, they don't say best candidate. They just leave you with the impression that he's the best candidate because they called him the leading candidate 12 times because he'd taken the most amount of bribes. So this system is fundamentally broken.
Yeah, we're rewarding the wrong behavior.
Yep.
And one of the most fundamental principles in psychology is you don't reward bad behavior, because the behaviors you reward, you're going to see more often. The behaviors you don't reward, you're going to see less often. I mean, it's just that simple. Your child throws a tantrum in the toy aisle at the grocery store where you're just in there picking up some milk and bread. You go by the little toy aisle, there's always a little section there, kid throws a tantrum. So, here, give him a toy. What do you think is going to happen the next time you go down the toy aisle? Kid's going to throw a tantrum in the floor, they're going to get a toy. We're rewarding bad behavior when, we report, this must be the best candidate because more people are supporting them. Look at how much money they raised. They were doing that in the presidential race. Here's how much Harris raised, here's how much Trump raised, here's how much they spent, blah, 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 blah. It seems like we're just focusing on the wrong things. You're right. I think the whole system is broken. And I hope that if we can keep talking about this, people are going to wake up to this and go, we got midterms coming up. I'm going to start paying attention and I'm going to ask my candidate, what about this? I'm going to ask them, where do they stand on this? I'm going to ask them what they're doing about this. I'm going to actually look at some reports. I'm going to look at some numbers and ask some hard questions. Because until there's accountability, it's not going to change.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not going to change until you fire all of them and get some others and people start realizing, hey, they're not going to sit still for this anymore.
Yeah. And we've got to give voters whose job is not to follow politics, right? Their job is to be a plumber or a dentist or an accountant, right? They're not tracking it as closely as we are because we're in the news business. And so one guide I would give to Democrats is, number one, primaries are more important than general elections because that's where you're going to pick someone who's either going to win or lose and someone who's either going to represent you or not at all represent you, right? Because if you pick the wrong guy and he wins the general election, you haven't done anything anyway because he's just going to be part of the uni-party. He's just going to take the money and do as he's ordered, right? So primaries are super important. Mainstream media will tell you the opposite. They'll tell you primaries are bad. That's where you waste money and you should save it for the general election. You'll hear all these talking points, right? Number two is, and this is actually, I said it for the Democrats, actually it's for both sides. Don't pick the guy taking corporate PAC money. And here I'll give you an example from the right wing, Josh Hawley. And even Matt Gaetz, for all of his foibles in his personal life, he stopped taking corporate PAC money, and so did Josh Hawley. What's the first thing they did? Anti-corruption bills. There you go. Okay? Because then now they're not hooked on the money. Not only are they not hooked on the money, now they got a competitive disadvantage they got to get rid of. So, right?
Yeah.
So if they're taking corporate PAC money, I guarantee you they're not representing you. They're representing them. And we live under corporate rule, and mainstream media never tells you that. We got to get these shackles off of us. We got to get back to freedom. So pick honest people. And they could be crazy right-wingers that I can't stand on the cultural issues and all this stuff, but give me someone honest. I'll take someone honest over someone that's taking the corruption any day of the week. One more fact about that so that people understand how stark it is. Right now, the person who has more money in a congressional race wins 95% of the time.
Really?
Not 55, not 45, not 70, 95. Doesn't matter if you're a Republican or Democrat. Doesn't matter if you're on the left or the right. It doesn't matter what your policy issues are. Whoever has more money wins 95% of the time. This is the wrong system. It incentivizes corruption rather than freedom and democracy.
Yeah, and look how much money is being spent on races now compared to even 20 years ago. I mean, it's unbelievably massive how much is being spent on races. What was spent on the presidential race this time? It was staggering amounts of money. So that just tells you they got a lot of debt.
Yeah.
They got a lot of debt they owe.
And here's a question that I often ask Democrats, because we're usually in primary fights with the establishment Democrats, et cetera. But again, it applies to both sides. Now, if ExxonMobil is giving, or fill in the blank, Pfizer is giving $1 million, whether it's to Pelosi or McConnell or whoever, do you think Pfizer is giving that money out of the goodness of their heart?
Oh, sure they are. Of course. They're patriots.
Okay, now I'm going to solve a mystery for you in a second. Okay, and the mystery is, why are all of our politicians so old? Well, I mean, Biden, got dementia on the job. That's how old he is, right? Trump's 78, Bernie's ancient, Pelosi, instead of Bernie's, and Trump are actually a little bit outside of this example. But for all the rest of them, McConnell freezing on camera, right? Pelosi and Schumer can't talk anymore. Like, Schumer goes out to do a press conference. I'm like, no, go back. Okay, so why are they so old? Because when Pfizer, ExxonMobil, and Raytheon give them $1 million, they already got a good return on investment. So they know they could rely on them. When I give them $1 million, they do exactly as I order them. You got a young guy, well, he'll probably do it, but I'm taking a little bit of a chance. Whereas Pelosi and McConnell, they give me return on investment for 30, 40 years straight. They're reliable. And they're reliable for the donors, and that's why they don't serve us at all.
Yeah. A lot of people listening are too young to remember much of the details about Watergate, but I think that's where the term became famous, follow the money.
Mm-hmm.
It's so true. If you want to know who's working for who and who's going to represent who, follow the money. Just follow the money. Where's the money coming from? Because if they took the money, then they're going to have to perform. They didn't get it for free. They owe somebody something, and you need to see who paid the most money. That's who they're going to be working for first. And if you gave $10 at work, You're way down the chain.
Yeah,
You are
yeah.
way down the chain.
You
Oh.
work for the person who signs your checks.
You bet you do. Well, this has been great. I've been talking to, I'm going to let you say it in Turkish.
Cenk Uygur.
Okay, I'm not even going to try that.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah.
I shouldn't even say because then everybody's going to come up to me and be like, Ambassador Uygur. No.
Yeah.
Notice how I threw the ambassador thing in there.
Yeah, but it is Cenk Uygur. I'll just give it the
Yes.
Texas version.
Yes.
We could talk for 2 more hours, which means we need to do this some more. Can we pick this up at another time?
I would love to. This is
And
exactly what we need as a country.
Yeah, I'll be proud to come on Young Turks and talk about some more. Give my best to Anna. And thanks for coming.
Thank you.
We'll talk soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Dr. Phil.
All right, guys. Again, the book is Justice is Coming, and there are some relevant things in here. Now, this book gets better with age, I'm telling you. It didn't come out last week, but this is a book you need to read. Justice is Coming. Listen, you find the Young Turks on YouTube TV, you won't have a hard time finding it because it's the #1 show. Whether you're left, right, center, Democrat, Republican, it is thought-provoking, and I highly recommend that you watch, tune in, hear what they have to say. You'll be joining me when you do, because I do. So I hope you'll do that. Thanks for being here today. So long.